opportunity to talk about some of the building blocks for Industry 4.0 and the future. Before I start my presentation, I want to kind of speak a few words on how today the entire world has been engulfed in a digital transformation. And this digital transformation has actually impacted every aspect of human life. The COVID pandemic has only accelerated this transformation of all enterprises into digital enterprises, and we are only here to see this continue in the future. We are seeing an increased, movement towards anything that is smart. Smart buildings, smart cars, smart transportation, smart appliances, smart clothing, smart spectacles, smartphones, which we already have. And we are also seeing that many sectors of the industries, the many verticals have been completely impacted, more than others. See, if you take healthcare and education, the pandemic has truly accelerated smart education and smart healthcare. There has been a huge increase in digital consultations by doctors, a lot of monitoring, patient real-time monitoring by doctors and healthcare providers in this pandemic time. We are seeing education as one vertical that has been not so much impacted by this digital, not so much affected by the COVID pandemic. I mean, colleges and schools, universities have been able to continue more or less, may not be with the same amount of efficiency as expected, but nevertheless, education has not been so much disrupted, and we have been able to at least reach 75 to 80% of the situation or the efficiency that was there before the pandemic. Now, let us take our own lives. Almost all of you are faculty members from various colleges, arts and engineering colleges. Look and see how our life has been impacted. As a faculty, as an administrator, I had a very, very regular work flow. Morning I come to the departmental office, take my first hour classes, do all the departmental activities, the guidance, the mentoring in the morning session. Around lunchtime, I would go and see my hackathon teams in the Cisco Incubator Makerspace facility, sit with them, go for a late lunch, come back to my administrative office, which is in a different block, and focus on the IQAC activity. So my work life was actually in 3 buildings. My department office was in a building called AB3. The Cisco Incubator is in another building called AB2 or Academic Block 2, and the administrative office was in AB1. So my life was, or my work life was AB1, AB2, AB3. Maybe the sequence would have changed here and there, but today life is totally changed. I am moving from Microsoft Teams, where I take all my classes, to Zoom, to Google Meet. Afternoon I have another meeting in some other software, and what I'm trying to say is that we are moving from one software to another software in terms of digital, no contact education, no contact training. We're not physically seeing. Now we are seeing many of the PhD thesis defenses going online. Several board of studies are going online. Most board of studies are going online. Academic councils are going online, and this trend is only going to continue. Now we are going to see hybrid classes, mostly hybrid classes. It may happen that universities and colleges need not spend so much of infrastructure in building classrooms. Even AICTE is probably looking at situations where to reduce the number of classrooms, and we may see hybrid classes. Some classes being online, some classes being offline. When you need to have concepts that require you to use the blackboard, or require you to use some hands-on laboratory, only probably the students may come for these kind of classes. So this kind of trend is only bound to continue. Now in this situation, how this topic of the faculty development program, CPS, or cyber physical systems, is a very, very relevant area with respect to the digital transformation, because as you know, yeah, in the cyber physical system, it's a virtual plus physical kind of mix, and that virtual mix we try to make smart. The virtual is anyway smart. We are having better algorithms, techniques, applications, but the physical is a little challenging, a little unpredictable, and that we can bring that air of predictability into that physical process. Anyway, we will see this. Let me just share my slides. So what I'm going to do today is my slide visible, ma'am? Is my
Yes,
slide
sir.
visible?
Yes, sir, your slide is visible.
Yeah, thank you very much. So what I'm going to do today is to give you a primer, to give you a basic fundamental idea into what is artificial intelligence, what is a data science, what is machine learning, and how they fit into the scheme of things for the cyber physical system. So it is basically a primer. Now, why I wanted to talk about this primer is because we tend to always confuse these things. We generally tend to use artificial intelligence instead of machine learning instead of data science, where there are some small but subtle differences between the three. And that's what we will be focusing on, the fundamentals of these three concepts, and then also move on to how they fit in, where they fit in to the cyber physical scheme of things. And there is actually a one-to-one direct mapping, and I will also talk to you about some applications in the CPS. So as mentioned, I have been working in Amrita Vishwavidyapitham for 2 decades now. So this is pretty much the outline. I start with the AI, data science and machine learning, and then go on to the how they fit in the CPS. So the first part of the thing is, what is artificial intelligence? Now, we generally tend to confuse this in a lot of ways. Now, basically speaking, artificial intelligence means we are trying to mimic human intelligence. Now, that brings me to the question, what is human intelligence? When we talk about human intelligence, we are the dominant species on this planet. And how this has happened? Because we have been able to discern better than any other species in this planet. We are able to observe, recognize, understand, discriminate, take smart decisions, solve problems, and face situations. Not only that, humans are endowed with the ability to not only observe, learn, take decisions, but also retain that decision-making capability. So we do something once, we don't forget. So you have applied for a passport. I mean, it's a very complicated procedure. You have to go to your hometown, you have to apply for a passport, you have to go through a police verification, you have to give the requisite forms and so on. Once you know that you have gone through that, you are able to remember, you are able to replicate. And not only that, you are able to store that information so that you help others also. The knowledge is created, the knowledge is disseminated, and the knowledge is transferred. Now, obviously, other species on this planet are not able to do these things. And that is why we have become the dominant species. And how do we get this human intelligence? It is a simple data collection process, or a data transfer process. Because we are able to go in this workflow of data flow, so as to speak. We are able to gather information. We are able to store the information. We gather information, we store the information, we retrieve the information. As and when required, we are able to go back and retrieve the information. We are able to analyze the information. We are able to make decisions and accordingly take actions. So we go through this process where we gather information, we get the information, we store the information, we retrieve the information as and when required, we analyze the information, and finally we use this decision, this information for taking actions and decision making. Now, this logical workflow, this logical flow of information and storage and retrieval and analysis is not possible by any other species. Even if it is possible, they are not able to communicate it out. We are able to communicate freely. We have built the tools to store this information, analyze the information, and do all these things. And this is how human intelligence is. And what is AI? It is the ability to imitate this human intelligence. And imitate in the sense, make the machine go through this process exactly like a human being. Gather the information, store the information, retrieve the information, analyze the information, and also take decisions based on the information, making the machine intelligent. So AI, you can also say, is computational intelligence, intelligent systems, intelligent computing. All these are more or less the same as artificial intelligence. Computational intelligence, artificial intelligence, machine intelligence, all these more or less have the same connotation and so on. And what is the how does it happen? There is an artificial intelligence agent in the computer that makes it in a very simple way, very simplistic way. You are giving a password when you give your Gmail. It asks you for your password and asks you whether you want to store the password, and you say yes. So it obviously stores the password. And when it stores this password, the next time it recognizes your email ID, it will ask you, can we use the stored password? You say yes, and the password automatically comes. This is a simple, probably the most basic form of how artificial intelligence, a bot that does this password saving. That is also a very simplistic form of artificial intelligence. Now, this is something I want to stress upon. What is the difference between artificial intelligence, machine learning, and deep learning? Many people confuse. Right? Many people confuse. They use deep learning instead of machine learning instead of artificial intelligence. Now, we have to understand in the form of a superset and a subset. Artificial intelligence, as I already mentioned, is making the computer imitate or work like a human. You are mimicking human intelligence. And how do? You use logic, use heuristics, use algorithms. If then else rules are there. Decision trees are there. Machine learning algorithms are there. So artificial intelligence is making the computer intelligent, making the system intelligent. And when it becomes intelligent, it is able to mimic or imitate the human being. Now, how do you do it? You use a lot of techniques, algorithms, heuristics. Many of those are based on statistics. Most of them, many of them. So, machine learning is the engine or the algorithms, the techniques, the tools, the heuristics that drive the engine of artificial intelligence. So, having said that, machine learning is definitely a subset of the AI. Now coming to the deep learning. Deep learning is a subset of machine learning. And what is the deep learning? When these algorithms, these heuristics, these tools and techniques use artificial neural networks, maybe recurrent neural networks, convolutional neural networks, when they use the neural networks for analysis and uh, uh, usage, we call it deep learning. So this is a very, very important slide in the sense that we should understand what is what. Artificial intelligence is the superset. Any tool technique that makes a computer intelligent and a system intelligent, so that that system or computer is able to mimic a human being. It may use so many algorithms, techniques, tools, heuristics. And what are these techniques and tools and heuristics? It is the machine learning. So machine learning is a subset. And deep learning are those algorithms which depend upon artificial neural networks. So this is a very important thing that we need to understand. AI is the superset. Machine learning is a subset of that. Deep learning is a further subset of this machine learning. Now let us go into, just give you a, I'm not going into too much of detail with respect to Prolog, but Prolog is a very simple language that we can use, especially for instruction and instruction for teaching AI, because the syntax is extremely, extremely relevant, so as to speak, with respect to the AI. So these are some of the resources. The slides have been handed over to the organizers, so you can take a look into these Prolog. But what is Prolog? Prolog is a very simple language. I'm not going to too much of detail, but I will just give you some glimpse on how it works, because you can give exercises to your students on AI and all. Now, basically, Prolog is a programming in logic. It's an interactive, like an interpreter language, a logical language. And in Prolog, Prolog uses what is known as, it is more of an interpreter, but it is using what is known as facts. It makes the computer take decisions based on the facts. And the building blocks for Prolog are, there are basically atoms. Atoms are like variables. Atoms are not variables, but what you should say, it is like a pronoun, or maybe you can say it is actually a variable or a pronoun, we can say. Variables are more like logic, some sort of logic. Here variable is, atom is the variable. When you see C programming or something, variable is something like a operator, you can say. Then how do we do this? So Prolog looks into facts, rules, and queries. You give the facts, you give the rules, and then you ask queries. That is how Prolog works. I'll give you an example. I know this is a little abstract. And in a Prolog program, we give what is known as clauses. There are different types of clauses that we give. And these three types of clauses are facts, rules, and questions. Now, I'll give you a very simple example. Rather than going with this thing, I will give you a very simple example. So, let us take this very simple example. Saleh is a teacher. Okay. Nora is a teacher. So both Saleh and Nora are teachers, that we can infer. Saleh is the father of Jabir. Right? Nora is the mother of Jabir. So now we are able to infer that Saleh and Nora both are teachers. Fact number one, Saleh is a teacher. Fact number two, Nora is a teacher. Saleh is the father of Jabir. Fact number three, Nora is the mother of Jabir. Now, from our intuition, what do we understand? We can easily understand that Saleh and Nora are teachers, and we can easily understand from our intuition, from our intelligence, that Saleh and Nora are obviously husband and wife, because Saleh is the father of Jabir, Nora is the mother of Jabir. That means Saleh is the husband of Nora, and Nora is the wife of this thing. And see, that is the rule that we infer from here. right? So we can make our own rules. Person 1 is a parent of person 2 if person 1 is either the father or the mother. Now we can add one level of complexity. Hamza is the father of Saleh. So from here we use our intelligence that if Hamza is the father of Saleh and Saleh is the father of Jabir, we can make a rule that Hamza is the grandfather of Jabir. So see how, simply speaking, we have stated the facts. We have not only stated the facts, we have built the rules to establish the facts, and based on this, we can make the queries. Right? So now we can make queries. How we have inferred that Saleh and Nora are husband and wife. Using the rules, we can infer that Hamza is the grandfather of Jabir. We can infer that Saleh is the husband of Nora. We can infer that Nora is the wife of Saleh, and we can query accordingly. So if you take this father Saleh Jabir, Saleh is the father of Jabir, the answer is yes. Like that, we can give these facts and ask queries. Grandparent Hamza X, right? Hamza is the grandparent of whom? Jabir. We have already proved it here. So this is how we can use this kind of facts and rules to build a knowledge base. We build a knowledge base, and as a result of this knowledge base, we are able to teach the computer, teach the system to make decisions and answer our queries. And we can do this in a very simple way using this Prolog software. It's very, very simple, straightforward software. And I will recommend that these resources are anyways available. I've sent the slides to the organizers. You can look into it, and gives this kind of simple assignments to your students so that they are able to get a feel of the artificial intelligence scenario. Now, so I told you syntax, all this I have explained. So you can try this out. It's open source, and anybody can listen. Okay, so that kind of sums up the basic idea of AI. AI is making the computer, making the system intelligent, making the computer take decisions based on the facts, the knowledge base that you have provided, just like a human being. Like I told you, right? Nora is the mother of Jabir. Saleh is the father of Jabir. You can deduce from your intelligence that Nora and Saleh are wife and husband. Same way, the computer is given this knowledge base, and based on that, it is able to take decisions. It is able to answer your queries and take this kind of. So this is the fundamental behind the AI. Now coming to the machine learning. As I already told you, machine learning is the engine that drives this artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is driven by AI, by machine learning, algorithms, tools, techniques, methods, and heuristics. Now, let us get a primer on what machine learning is. We are living today in an explosion of knowledge, right? Explosion of knowledge. Every day, how much of knowledge is being created, information is being created, right? So much of data is there. The example, I will give you my own example, but if you take this example, I don't know if you know about Blu-ray. Blu-ray is actually not a very popular format for music. Blu-ray disc. Nowadays, people don't use. People prefer CD and DVD discs. Nobody uses Blu-ray disc. But if you take the Blu-ray discs, the data generated every day, it is equal to the height of 4 Eiffel Towers. And I am talking of a Blu-ray which people are not using. Now coming to the big data. We are living in a big data revolution. Today, there are 2.7 billion people using a social media platform known as Facebook. 2.7 billion people. 1 out of 3 people in the planet is on social media Facebook. You can imagine the amount of data generated by these 2.7 billion people. Even if 700 million people post something on Facebook every single day, it may be more or less, I don't know, but you are liking, I am posting a photo, another person is putting a video, another person is changing the relationship status. Imagine the amount of data that is generated every single day by 2.7 billion people. Interestingly, somebody used to say, Facebook is the largest media company in the world, but Facebook does not create any media. The media or the content is created by you and me. Imagine the data that is being generated. 2 billion people use YouTube, open YouTube videos, download YouTube videos, upload videos. In your car, whichever car that you are using, there are something like 30 to 100 sensors. Depends. Suppose your car is a high-end car. You may have 100 sensors in the car. Suppose you are using a small Alto. You may have 50 sensors in your car. You can imagine the amount of data that is generated by these 50 sensors. And you do the math. Billion, I don't know how many cars are there. Maybe 4 or 5 billion cars are there into 50 sensors. You can imagine how much of data is created. Now, in this big data, we need to use this data. This data is a minefield. And we will see data science, because data science is how you make this data proper, how you make this data palatable for the machine learning. So we have so much of data. We have a big data. Now we need to analyze this data. We need to find hidden patterns in the data. We need to find relationships, patterns, and extract these information to our benefit. And we also need to make decisions. See, your entire life is there, right? If you take your Facebook, I tell many people, you want to know what kind of work I do, just go to my Facebook page. Last 10 years, every single lecture is there. You want to find out what all talks I have given, go to my YouTube channel. It's a very recent YouTube channel. I think 2 months, thousands and thousands of views are there. Right? You want NBA accreditation, there are some lectures. NAC accreditation, there are lectures. You want machine learning, there are lectures. You want cyber security, lectures are there. I mean, the things that I know. Right? So, what I'm trying to say is, we need to analyze this data, this big data, the data in the social media channels, the data in the sensors, the data everywhere. We need to analyze them. We need to look for patterns. We need to look for relationships. We need to extract, and also we need to take decisions based on that. And for that, there are some simple terminologies that we need to understand. Right? Features are also known as dimensions or attributes. I'm sure we hear different language, supervised learning, unsupervised. I'll come to that, but please understand features, attributes, dimensions. Input, label, right? Records. So these are simple things that we know. We know that we give an input, we get an output, we get a sample, and every entry is a sample or a record. They're all the same. and every entry may have some features or attributes or dimensions or characteristics. These are simple things. Now you take a cat will have attribute 5 whiskers. Obviously a cat will have 2 eyes, that everybody knows. Long tail, short tail. So we have given 3 attributes or 3 dimensions: number of whiskers, tail, length, face, or whatever. So we have to get used to this: attributes, dimensions, features, input, observations or records or entries. Now what do we do? Now machine learning means you are trying to use this big data. You are trying to take the problem, take the data set, understand the problem, analyze the problem, analyze the data set, and try to get insights out of it. And what is that process? The first step is you understand the problem or the data set. Now here is where the data science comes. Most of the data is unstructured in different formats, different hues, different sizes, different colors, different types. It is unstructured. And when the data is unstructured, the data set is complicated. Now we need to make it in a structured fashion. And data science tries to make the data palatable, easy to use, and so on. 1 minute. So it tries to make the data palatable. It tries to make the data easy to use. That is the data science. So anyway, I'll come to that. First, we understand the problem or the data set. Then we extract the features or the attributes that we need for the data from the data set. We identify the problem. We look for an algorithm or a heuristic or a model to analyze this problem. We train and test the model. We try to get accuracy in the prediction. So for all this, the big data is needed. And the data, I already told you, the big data is very unstructured. And we need to make it proper or palatable. And that is where the data science comes. We'll come to that anyway later. And what are the tools that are there? Hundreds of tools are there. In fact, the challenge will be which tool to use. There are so many tools. There are so many applications. There are supervised approaches. There are unsupervised approaches. There are hybrid approaches. There are semi-supervised approaches. Now, which tool to use? There are deep learning tools which are based on based on the structure of an artificial neural networks. The layers are there, how these layers interact. So the challenge is which to use, when to use. Now, coming to the basic 3 types of machine learning. Simply speaking, the 3 types are supervised learning, unsupervised learning, and reinforcement learning. What is supervised learning? In supervised learning, you are having the manual, you are having the data, you are having the algorithm, you have the manual, and based on that, based on the manual, it takes the decision. Let us take a simpler example. You are buying a chair online. Its parts and instruction manual are given. The instruction manual clearly gives the names and labels of the parts and how to assemble them. So you have the manual, you have the chair parts, you look at the manual and you make the chair. Sometimes you may have different types of legs for the chair, but whatever it is, the manual is there. Based on the manual, you make the chairs available. This is supervised learning. So The parts of the chair is the data which you are going to make. The labels are the parts of the chair in the manual. This is the leg of a chair. This is the surface of a chair. This is the headrest of a chair, and so on. You go on referring to the manual and then you make the chair. That is the training. And once you complete, you check whether it is correct or not, whether the chair is okay. That is the testing. And the output is the final chair that you have got and its parts. So supervised learning means you know the manual, you have the manual, and based on the manual, you are assembling a chair from its parts. In other words, you have the input, the data is available, the algorithm is available, and you simply implement the algorithm and get the output, the prediction. And the most important type of, and for supervised learning, we also say that the data set is labeled. You know the label, or you know the address, you know what it is. That is very clearly given. A simple example is, see, there are cats and dogs. Cats and dogs are there. You know what a dog looks like. You know where a cat looks like. You look into the photo and you supervise, you classify them to dogs and cats. And in supervised learning is mostly synonymous with classification. Classification means you have different dogs and cats, right? You have cats and dogs, a mix of cats and dogs. You know how the cat looks like, you know how the dog looks like, and you classify that data set. Okay, this is a cat, this is a dog, this is a cat, this is a dog. So it is mostly, not exactly, but mostly synonymous with classification. Supervised machine learning. What is unsupervised learning? Now, unsupervised learning is more or less synonymous with what is known as clustering. Now, what is happening in unsupervised learning? There is no manual. There is no photo that says that this is a dog, this is a cat. There is no manual for the chair. There are only some parts, right? There is no manual for chair. There are only some parts. There is no picture of a dog or a cat. So you don't know how a dog looks like. You don't know how a cat looks like. And you have a montage of pictures. Or you have so many parts which you need to assemble into a chair. Now what do? You have to group them, the similar looking things together. You don't know the label. You don't know that this is a cat. You don't know this is a dog. So you have to group, you have to learn, you have to figure out how to group the similar looking parts together without knowing their actual names. And this is clustering or unsupervised model. So in an unsupervised model, there is unlabeled data, and from the unlabeled data, the algorithm tries to make sense by extracting features and patterns. That is the logic. Random forest. So many algorithms are there. K-means, nearest neighbor, so many other. So let us take this. Look at this ensemble. There are fishes and birds. Interestingly, some fishes look like birds. Some birds may look like fishes in terms of the shape. But what you are doing here is you are giving, we don't know which is a fish, which is a bird. But some fishes look like birds, some birds look like fishes. Very similar looking, right? If you see this now, almost like a fish. So, but what the clustering or the unsupervised learning algorithm does is it learns from the extracted features and then clusters the fishes together, clusters the bird together. So this is unsupervised model wherein the unlabeled data is clustered into known segments. Now the last type of reinforcement learning is machine learning is reinforcement learning. Reinforcement learning is bootstrap, feedback. The example is you are preparing for an annual exam. Every time you write a test, you go on writing tests so that you can write a competitive exam. Every time you write a test, you get feedback. A feedback may be a plus or a minus. It could be a reward or a warning. And based on every test that you are writing, you get feedback. And each feedback, that plus or minus, that warning or a reward, will help you to improve. In other words, it is a bootstrap method, or a feedback loop is there, where the output is always bootstrapped back to the input. That kind of machine learning is reinforcement learning. So here what happens is that an example is given. An agent interacts with the environment by performing actions and learning from errors and rewards. Error is a minus and reward is a plus. So every time you get a reward, you learn from that. Every time you get a error, you learn from that. That trial and error goes on. So it is a feedback loop, continuous feedback loop. And every time you get feedback, it's either a reward or an error or a negative. So this is what I'm trying to sum up. The machine learning, as I told you, is the engine that drives the artificial intelligence. Machine learning is the engine that drives artificial intelligence. And in machine learning, basically speaking, there are three types. Of course, deep learning is a subset. Deep learning is another classification. Deep learning can be supervised or unsupervised. That's a different thing anyway. But broad classification is supervised learning, which is also known more or less as classifications, where you have the manual, you make the machine learn explicitly, data with clearly defined output is given, the manual is given, and you get the feedback and you predict based on that manual. And generally it is synonymous with classification. But even regression is more like a statistical prediction, is also a type of supervised learning, but primarily the supervised learning is classification. Now you come to unsupervised learning, which is more or less synonymous with clustering. Here, you do not have the manual, you do not know how a dog looks like, you do not know how a cat looks like. If you are building a chair, you don't know how the chair looks like, you only have the parts. And based on that, the machine learns. It does feature extraction, looks for patterns, it looks for and clusters them and makes its own label. In supervised, the labels are known. Here, the labels are, are predicted through the cluster. And finally, we have reinforcement learning, which is a reward-based learning also. So every time you give an output, that output may be a plus or a minus. It may be a positive or a negative. It may be a reward or an error. The reward, you learn from the reward, you learn from both the reward as well as the error. And every time that feedback goes back to the input. And if your algorithm is trained in such a way that you get more and want to maximize the rewards so as to increase the accuracy. So this is the basic functionality or the types of machine learning. Now I told you about deep learning. Deep learning can be supervised or unsupervised, but deep learning is sort of, what should I say? It is it could be in any of the three, actually speaking. But deep learning essentially is a subset of machine learning. It can be supervised or unsupervised, but generally in deep learning, we are looking at a neural network, an artificial neural network. We are training the layers and trying to understand through that prediction and perception, it gives you the. Now, these are some of the methods that we use for machine learning. A confusion matrix is a very, very good predictive tool. We're using the true negative, the false negative, the true positive, and the false positive, right? True negative means it is actually negative. False negative means it is not negative, but it is shown as negative. And these are some of the tools that are there. And some of the metrics that we use for this include accuracy, precision, F1 score. These are some of the tools that are there. So this gives you a fairly good idea about as I told you, machine learning. Supervised learning is primarily classification. Classification is used for a lot in image processing, image classification, security, intruder checking, those kind of things, video surveillance, image surveillance, used for identity fraud detection, diagnostics, and also in some level in customer retention. See, simply speaking, I'll give you a simple example. Somebody is always buying bread. It's quite likely that the guy who buys bread will also buy butter and jam, right? Pattern is there. There is a very clear pattern. So you can classify those people who buy bread, they will also be buying jam and butter, right? Second type of supervised learning is regression. Again, a special type of classification. Regression is used a lot as a statistical tool that is used for many predictive forecasting of life expectancy, weather forecasting, market forecasting. Unsupervised learning, I told you, is primarily known as clustering. Again, we use for customer recommender systems, targeted marketing. We use these kind of things. And one type of unsupervised learning is dimensionality reduction, which is reducing the number of features. Again, that's actually a part of clustering. We take the features that are important and remove the features or dimensions that are not so important. And I already told you about reinforcement learning. Linear regression, I told you, is a type of supervised learning. It is trying to predict the value of the variable based on the value of another variable. Basically, it's a prediction. Okay. Now, coming to the data science. I already told you that the data science, where does the data science come in, right? Where does the data science come in? You have so much of big data. You have so much of big data. Now, this big data is mostly unstructured. It is in different types, different formats, different hues and colors and sizes and so on. Now, if you are able to make this data very aligned to the machine learning algorithm, the efficiency of machine learning algorithm inputs. Normally, we need to use this unstructured data, convert it into a structured format. I'll give you a simple example. Suppose there are two teachers who are doing grading, right? You are doing grading. I make my own grade rule. The other faculty also makes a different grade rule. I grade my class. The other faculty also grades their class. But finally, we have to have a common grade. My 85 may be A plus, but the other faculty's A plus may be 95. And it's not right. It is the same college, only two sections with two different teachers grading. What do we do? Ideally, both of us have to sit together sit together and make the grading rule in such a way that my format and the other faculty's format are the same. And that is what data science tries to do. Make the data in such a way that it is very palatable, useful, and easily fitting into the machine learning algorithm. And what does it use? It uses statistics, mathematics, programming, and visualization to convert the data into information. And today, data science, we are living in a big data age. We need, everywhere there is big data. How do we make the data so palatable, so useful? That is what we try to understand. Now, we also need to have the data in such a way that, so this is a very simple thing. You acquire the data, you clean up the data so that it is palatable for machine learning. You need the data you get, but this is different formats of data are there. All these formats have to be wrangled or cleaned upon. How do you clean upon? You can use statistical models, you can use mathematical model, binning, or so many models are there. You clean up the data, and that cleaned up data you give it to the machine learning algorithm. At the same time, the data you should be able to visualize, you should be able to report, read, and also transmit and uh, disseminate. So much of data is there. All this data is cleaned up, is combined, is cleaned up in such a way that anybody uh, and so on, so forth, uses this. Now, the advantage of Python is Python deals with Python is a very good language with respect to there are so many packages and libraries in Python that are very friendly with data science, where we are able to use the data, clean up the data, wrangle the data, visualize the data, store the data, and so on. And there are libraries at every step. For acquiring of the data, there are libraries. Wrangling data, toolboxes like pandas are there. For visualizing, matplotlib is there. Modeling, numpy is there. Visualizing, scipy, bokeh are there. So there are a lot of packages within the and libraries within the Python scheme of things that help us to in a very advantageous way to be able to work on the analytics. Yeah, this is what I told you. NumPy is for scientific computing. SciPy is for software for mathematics science like MATLAB. So NumPy is like MATLAB, similar. Matplotlib is for graphics. So many are there. Keras, so many things are there. Now, what are the steps in the process of data analytics? You have a business problem, you acquire the data, you clean up or wrangle the data, you analyze the data, explore the data, predict the data, and communicate the result. Now, this is all possible using the tools that are there within the Python framework. Already taught. Yeah, this is what I've been trying to tell you. For every part, there are some packages that are available. So data science is now found entry into almost every single step. And so much of data is available, whether it is the social networking platforms, the search engines, the healthcare, the finance, public sector. So much of data is there, and using the data science, we clean up all these, convert the unstructured to structured, so that it is very palatable for the machine learning algorithm. I told you, like the grading, right? I am grading, other person is grading. Both of us make it into a common format so that each of us can easily put it there, and then the grading becomes easy, and then we can use that in the future also. That is the idea about data science. Now I come to the last part. I think I'll skip these things. Yeah. Applications, healthcare, financing. Now coming to the where these things fit in, right? I'm sure in the morning you already saw 2 lectures on cyber physical systems. Cyber physical systems, as you know, are combinations of physical and virtual processes. Basically, you have cyber and physical. Physical process is there, virtual process is there. The virtual process could be digital or analog. And to confuse the mix, there may be human component also. So generally, a cyber physical system will have different types of components, some virtual and some physical. Physical could be human also. Physical and human are very unpredictable, are very not in our control generally. The digital and analog to a large extent, which can be brought into a virtual frame, are somewhat predictable. So the cyber physical system is an amalgam. There are some physical processes which could also include human beings also into the mix. There are virtual processes which could be digital or analog processes. Now these have to collaborate with each other. These have to work with each other. And as I mentioned, the human component is unpredictable. You know how humans are. Many things are unpredictable. Today you are very tired. If you are a cement operator, you are very tired, you are having a fever, obviously your performance will be bad when you are mixing cement, right? So the physical, the human element is unpredictable. The physical also is to some extent unpredictable, because every physical machine is exposed to wear and tear. Machines also show fatigue, or they become tired, or because probably not because of a human element, but because of lack of maintenance, right? So there is a challenge with respect to this physical, which includes the human. Now you have the digital and the analog, which is predictable. So what do we do? How do we make these cyber physical systems better? The cyber physical systems can be made better by the intelligence. Making these cyber physical systems more and more intelligent, right? Making these cyber physical systems more and more intelligent. That is the answer to this solution. And how do we do it? We use the machine learning, we use the AI, we use the data science. And what do we get? A myriad number of applications in cyber physical systems. Remember, I already told you, a cyber physical means there is an amalgam. There are physical processes which include humans. There are virtual processes which could be analog or digital, but they are, and these have to collaborate with each other. And I also told you the physical and the human are unpredictable. The digital and the analog, to more extent, we are able to control. So what do? We need a collaboration. We need to make these cyber physical systems more and more intelligent. And how do you make them intelligent? There is a smart grid where electrical power can be conserved, can be disseminated, can be stored, can be transferred to anywhere and any place. Obviously, in the smart grid, the human element is there. The electrical transmission tower is there. The computerized control is there. A smart pipeline that gives oil or petroleum or natural gas. A self-driving car, a car that moves on its own, analyzes traffic patterns, looks for the traffic and makes actions. Like that, most of these use cases are there for cyber physical system. And by and large, almost all these cyber physical system use cases tend to have IoT as a backbone of these cyber physical systems. So cyber physical systems, physical plus virtual. Physical includes human beings. The physical and human are unpredictable, challenging. The virtual are more able to control, and we have to control. We have to predict the other part, right? And how do we do this? We need to make cyber physical systems which comprise interacting digital, analog, human, and physical components engineered for function. We need to make them intelligent. And how do we do that? So many examples I told you. There is an autonomous vehicle, there is a Mars rover, there is a smart bomb. How do we make these intelligent cyber physical systems? We use the AI, we use the ML, and we use the data science. Artificial intelligence, machine learning, and data science. And there is also a very clear mapping with respect to this intelligent cyber physical systems. Many of these intelligent cyber physical systems use are applications. Your smart building is an application. Your green building is an application. Your smart grid is an application. Your autonomous vehicle is an application. And all of these rely on some sort of artificial intelligence or computational intelligence. The AI directly maps to the applications for the intelligent cyber physical system, and that includes the smart building, the smart car, the green building. The green building, which is environmentally conscious and environmentally intelligent, it is able to take decisions. A self-driving and autonomous car that is driving without a driver, a driverless car, it is able to take decisions. It has got the AI. So AI maps to the applications for the intelligent CPS. The machine learning maps to the algorithms for the intelligent CPS, the intelligent cyber physical system. Now, it could be both supervised, it could be unsupervised, it could be even deep learning can be used in certain specific cases. Some examples are disease prediction in smart healthcare, algorithms to predict diseases in smart healthcare. Already the application of smart healthcare is there, but you need to predict the disease. For that, you need an algorithm. It could be supervised or unsupervised. Attack detection in a smart grid. You already have a smart electrical transmission, but there could be attacks. How do you detect those attacks into that application? Intruder alert, intruder detection in smart buildings. Even that is a issue. The building is already smart, but you need to know an anomaly detection, an intruder detection. So the ML, the machine learning, directly maps onto the algorithms for the intelligent CPS. And finally, the data science. The data science maps to the architectures for intelligent cyber physical systems. Fog computing is a very new concept. How do we make the data clean? How do we make the data location aware? How you reduce the increase the saliency, reduce the latency, increase the sensitivity, so that the data is clean, and the architecture is tailored in such a way that we are able to get best results out of the algorithm. Cloud, fog, all are examples. So actually, this is I think the last slide. So simply speaking, AI, ML, and DS, data, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and data science directly map to intelligent cyber physical systems or CPS. AI directly focuses on the applications for cyber physical systems, which include smart car, smart buildings, smart healthcare, smart grid, autonomous vehicles, and so on, smart appliances. Machine learning algorithms, both supervised and unsupervised, directly map to the algorithms needed for the intelligent CPS, which includes some examples like an intruder detection in a smart building, disease prediction in healthcare. And finally, the data science directly maps to the architectures, the new architectures for the intelligent cyber physical system, which include the location aware data, saliency data, latency reduction data, sensitive data, and also models like fog and cloud computing. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I think I finished a little ahead of schedule. I will be happy to answer any queries if you have. Over to the organizers. Thank you.
Any queries from participant side?
Sir, good afternoon, sir.
Yeah, yes, sir.
Manoj Kumar, Assistant Professor from Mahendra College of Engineering, Salem. And I really
Yes, sir. Tell me.
appreciate this session is very informative regarding this AI data science, sir.
Thank you very much.
So the session is very informative. So we always humans, we always evolve with technology right from thousands of years. My one question out of the box is that during our introduction session earlier this morning, one of our chief guests has said that we have to go hand in hand with nature while we are evolving with technology, sir.
Yeah.
Precisely to be say that how far we can rely on this setup. That is, how far we can rely on this artificial intelligence and data science and all this mapping we are creating along with this big data science. We just give it as in manual inputs to the system. So it is always vulnerable towards the attacks. It is vulnerable, right? So am I getting to the point? It is really vulnerable to the persons who are really getting into the system. Those who are reading the systems are very, very effective enough to make the existing system so vulnerable. How far we can rely? Is this Industries 5.0 is really reliable at this trend at the outset while reading the entire ecosystem as a uniform session? We are in both Eastern culture and in Western culture. Both in Eastern and Western culture, collaboratively seeing while seeing this a globalization view, whether this setup is really vulnerable towards this Industry 5.0.
Yeah, it's a very actually an excellent question. So there are two parts to this answer. The first part is, there is a lot of fear factor also. Are these, one part is the vulnerability part. I will explain that vulnerability second. The first is the fear factor. I'm sure many of the your children or your students would talk about the Terminator movies.
Yeah, sure.
Right? Terminator movie where the it's talks of the intelligence becoming more so intelligent that it taking over the human beings, killing or exterminating human beings. Another is that Avengers movie and the Age of Ultron, where an artificial intelligence destroys a most advanced artificial intelligence and tries to take over the planet. It comes to a conclusion that human beings are the problem, so we have to destroy all human beings. So if you ask me, that is very, very, very far away. We have not come to such a state where we have any artificial intelligence application that has become self-aware. Like, that Skynet in Terminator movie becomes self-aware. So we are very, very far. We are probably a century away from that thing. So now what we have very advanced robots. We have a car that can drive on its own, make decisions based on the knowledge base. Now, having said that, whatever AI that you are giving, right? Whatever AI you give, it is all based on the knowledge base that you give the artificial intelligence, and that knowledge base is limited by the human intelligence. Wow, what we know only we can give the computer. So regarding the safety part, the culture part, to what extent we can, you talked of Western culture, Indian culture. So somebody was, I remember a very interesting thing. There was some cloning, a debate on cloning, whether we should do cloning, whether we should go for research. Now, I don't know. I know that it's a very difficult question to answer. But as far as safety is concerned, we are very far away from the where these kind of AI become self-aware. So we don't have to worry. At least for this, our generation, we need not worry. We do not know after 50 years or 70 years, the next generation, we cannot predict. It could happen. You never know. There could be some machine that becomes very intelligent. But today it is a long shot. No, very, very long shot may not happen for a century. Number one. Number two, now, with respect to vulnerability.
Yes, sir.
Now, that is a very valid concern that you say. Now, I do a bit of work for cyber security. Now, the new paradigm in cyber security today is that there is nothing called privacy.
Yes.
There's nothing called privacy. That concept itself is not there. We may say, we may make IT Act in 1999, we may make Patriot Act in the US and all. let me tell you, there is absolutely no concept of privacy. If you are using a smartphone, if you are using a Facebook account, if you are using a Gmail,
Yes.
where is this Gmail hosted? Gmail is hosted on a cloud. Where are you using a YouTube? Are you putting your video on the YouTube? YouTube is on a cloud. There is no concept. Everything and anything is vulnerable. That is a fact of the life today. If you are using a smartphone, you don't know. You don't know. I use an Apple phone. I do not know what Taiwanese company or Chinese company knows what I'm doing. Right? In between, there was a big hue and cry about Zoom. Zoom is a Chinese platform. Almost all platforms, there will be some Chinese investment. You cannot do anything about this. So the only way vulnerability is a part of life. Vulnerability is there in any system and every system. Whether it is your smartphone, your email ID, or your corporate computer, which is under a VPN or a virtual private network. So the only way that we can be safe is that we take all the cyber safety instructions as much as possible. That's the only way we can be safe. And even then, we need not be safe. So you cannot be a digital nomad. Today, world is like that. So the only way to move ahead in this digital age is that we cannot be a cyber nomad or a cyber nomad is somebody in the desert. No, we cannot live in a desert. We are living in a globalized world. We need to collaborate and contribute. The only way to move ahead is vulnerabilities. We make a conscious effort to look for all kind of vulnerabilities and stay safe. That's the only way possible. To be very honest, any system can be hacked. That's a fact of life. Now, people today are talking of something called SMAC, SMAC, social. All applications are now coming with what is known as a SMAC stack, Social Mobile Analytics Cloud. Every application that you are seeing will come in this stack. There will be a social media component, there will be a mobile or an app component, there will be an analytics component, there will be a cloud component. Means you don't have any access to the data. Data is somewhere in some data center. But all applications are like that. So the only way is we be safe. When we are hosting an application, we find out what are the vulnerabilities of the system. Whatever enterprise you're running a college, you're running a company, you're running a startup, you have more and more security protocols in place. That's the only solution, according to me. I know I have not been able to give a proper answer but that is a fact. There is no way to escape these things.
Yes. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. It's a really nice session, and it's an eye-opening session for about the AML and your data science. And the participants, is there any other questions from your side?
So I have given my contact details in the chat box, my email ID, my mobile number, and I have given you the name of my channel in YouTube. It's a very fresh, only 2 months back I started. Just search for Prashant R. Nair on YouTube or Facebook. In Facebook also all these things are available. I think you can't become a friend, you can only follow. PRASHAND space R space NAIR.
Thank you, sir. Sir, I hope there will be no more questions from participants. And I am very thankful from Krishna Engineering College for giving the proper report, sir. Thank you, sir. And dear participants, I posted the feedback and attendance link in the chat box. Kindly fill that. So this is for day 1, session 3. Feedback and attendance link is posted in the chat box. Kindly fill over that. And tomorrow we have 3 sessions, same timing. And the detailed mail about the session and the others are shared with your mail ID. Also, we'll post in the WhatsApp group also. And meanwhile, if you have any difficulty to fill the form or you are not able to join to the classrooms, kindly inform us. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. All the best to all the participants. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.